want to welcome everyone to the webinar. Most importantly, I hope you're doing well and staying healthy. I know these are turbulent times, and so I appreciate your joining us this afternoon. I serve as the Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at Valdosta State University, which is, Valdosta is right on the Florida-Georgia border. If you've ever been heading down to Disney World, you might have passed through Valdosta as the last stop for cheap gas before you get to Florida. I've been a Kerr counselor since 2001, so I've been involved with Kerr since the Social Science Division was created almost 20 years ago. I've been involved with what was the Kerr Quarterly. The precursor to SPUR was the Kerr Quarterly, and I think I was initially involved in 2005 or 2006 with the Kerr Quarterly, and with SPUR, I've had the honor of serving as editor-in-chief from 2015 through the present. And so we look forward to sharing with you some insights about the journal, as well as answering questions that you might have. On our next slide, we have just kind of an overview of our spring issue. This was in fall of 2019, and I know the print may be a little small, but you can see in our table of contents, you know, we publish articles on theory, practice, assessment, as well as international perspectives. So last fall was a really nice example of articles that were submitted to us dealing with, whether it's think pieces about undergraduate research, the assessment of undergraduate research, what you're doing on your campus, the actual practice of, such as cures, course-based undergraduate research experiences, or international perspectives. We have two editors of our international perspectives, where we look at research at institutions across the globe, and we're always excited about that. And then you can see we have a section on undergraduate research highlights, as well as a book review that we do each issue. So that kind of gives you a nice overview, I think, of our table of contents and what that looks like. So fall 2019 was non-themed, meaning we were publishing articles that came into us throughout the year, dealing with a variety of topics. We also have themed issues. So we have, non-themed issues, but we also have themed issues. And the next slide, you can see on winter of 2019 with the lovely purple cover. The theme there, Rebecca Jones, one of our issue editors from chemistry, did a really nice issue, a retrospective on undergraduate research. So kind of looking at some of the classic works on the assessment of undergraduate research, the role of NSF, how the process has maybe changed for promotion and tenure on our campuses, and how we look at undergraduate research. So this retrospective or assessment of undergraduate research, right, how those studies have evolved over time. So again, this was a themed issue, and also I would just point out that even when there's a theme to an issue, we also publish non-themed articles. Again, those are articles that are coming in throughout the year. So we publish four issues: fall, winter, spring, and summer each year. And we are actually in volume 3 of SPUR. So SPUR officially launched in the fall of 2017, and we're in the third volume right now, and already looking forward to the fourth volume and some upcoming issues. So you'll see on our next slide some of SPUR, the spring 2020 issue, which we're putting to bed right now. Lisa Gates, one of our wonderful issue editors that you'll hear from later, has been shepherding through that issue. So the issue coming out next month will be undergraduate research for the 21st century. Then summer and fall of 2020, these will be just general issues. Again, these are non-themed manuscripts, that we get throughout the year. Non-traditional approaches to undergraduate research, that's winter 2020. So we've already had the call for proposals on that one. We've already invited manuscripts. And then undergraduate research and climate change, we are especially excited about that topic. And that's kind of the whole reason we do themes, right? To try to tap into what are some of the cutting edge themes going on on your campuses or in your undergraduate research programs and know it. So summer of 2021 is undergraduate research, kind of innovative approaches in the arts and humanities. And again, invitations have gone out for that issue. It basically grew out of our winter 2020 call on non-traditional approaches, where we had a good number of submissions about very cool approaches in the arts and humanities, such as how oral histories are being used in undergraduate research, as well as some other approaches. So, I mean, what you can see on this slide then is, you know, we have themed issues. Maybe 2 out of every 4 issues in a given volume are thematic issues where you would see a call for proposals. But then also we have general issues, and so we welcome that you submit to us on a variety of topics any time throughout the year, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. To learn more about SPUR, you know, just beyond today's webinar, we have the website, and this is through the Council on Undergraduate Research website. But if you'd like to see the SPUR editorial board, if you'd like to do an online search, so you can search for articles on assessment, you can search for articles on study abroad in undergraduate research, going back to when we were the Kerr Quarterly. You can, of course, most importantly, I hope, get information on how to submit to us and what the submission guidelines are. And I should say just briefly about our editorial board, if you submit to us, if you submit a manuscript to us, it'll initially be assigned to most likely a division editor, say in chemistry or the social sciences or arts and humanities or geosciences. And then the division editor will oversee the peer review process, will assign 2 or 3 peer reviewers. So you'll get feedback from 2 to 3 peer reviewers, as well as the issue editor, as well as myself. So I'll weigh in. We have a rigorous peer review, but it's also a very constructive peer review. I mean, I'm impressed every week with the incredibly thoughtful and detailed responses and critiques that our reviewers give, always in a positive, helpful fashion. I can't say that about all the other journals that I've submitted to or been involved with. And we have Beth Foxwell, who's our technical editor, was just sharing with me that we have about a 45% acceptance rate. So, you know, I would argue it's a rigorous journal, but also we have a good number of revise and resubmits that ultimately move through to publication. So a 45% acceptance rate is where we're at over the last 12 months or so. And in just also share with you, in 2019, we had almost 50 manuscripts submitted to SPUR. 26 prospecti were submitted for call for proposals. And if you go back to 2018, we had about 21 prospecti that were submitted for calls for a call for proposals, as well as 34 manuscripts. So I think we're actually growing the number of manuscripts that are coming in each year, and we're always thrilled to see that. On the next slide, so beyond just kind of our general webpage, the next slide just kind of drills down a little bit and shows you that we have a SPUR and Kerr Quarterly Index. And, you know, for those of you that are faculty or administrators or college or university staff, I was pleased to see the wide distribution we have in this webinar. And I find this invaluable. So again, in this index, you can look for articles on assessment, course-based undergraduate research experiences, like I said earlier, study abroad and undergraduate research. And this goes back several decades, and I think you'll find that helpful. And again, it's all peer-reviewed scholarship from Kerr Quarterly up through the scholarship and practice of undergraduate research. You know, these are all peer-reviewed articles. And then, most importantly, for those of you thinking about submitting to us, on our next slide, we have the website for submitting. So it's spur.msubmit.net. And we have a very helpful green arrow. I appreciate Beth including that. So submission guidelines are critical, right? And I know that's really kind of basic pedestrian advice, but on the other hand, you know, we occasionally get a manuscript, and I'm just not quite sure if they looked at the submission guidelines. So obviously, take a look at the submission guidelines. We use the Chicago Manual of Style in terms of citations and references. We ask that you include an abstract, a concise abstract, as well as author bios. If you have tables or figures, make sure they're readable. I mean, I know that sounds like really basic advice, but I'm kind of amazed how many times I get figures that are just super hard to read, or it almost looked like a picture might have been taken with an iPhone and then transferred in. So make sure the tables and figures are legible. We generally ask for manuscripts of around 3,500 words, 4,000, but we're also willing to, we're very open to getting articles that are longer in length, especially if you have a really extensive undergraduate research program you're describing, or if maybe there's a lot of assessment you've done longitudinally over many years. So, we realize manuscripts can go longer than, say, 3,500 words or so. But the submission guidelines, we've recently revised those, tried to make those more, I think, user-friendly for those of you thinking about submitting. So again, I think the submission guidelines are incredibly helpful. So on kind of the next two slides, we just say, hey, what can you submit to SPUR? Well, as I've said repeatedly, my friends, we're always looking for articles of general interest. Again, I can't say this enough. It doesn't have to be related to a theme. So don't feel like you have to wait for a theme to come out to submit to us. But if there's a theme like climate change in undergraduate research that connects to what you're doing, we'd love to have you submit a prospectus, and then we look at those prospecti to make article invitations. We also do vignettes for themed issues. So vignettes for themed issues would be maybe a paragraph or two paragraphs that kind of concisely notes, what you're doing on campus. So whether for general interest or for a themed issue, as I note, all of the articles are peer reviewed. Additionally, we are always looking for books to review. So as we note on our next slide, if there's a book you've written that deals with undergraduate research, we'd love to put that in the queue for our book review editor. If there's interest in reviewing a book, we can put you in touch with our book review editor, Nicholas, who kind of manages that. And then finally, undergraduate research highlights. If you have co-published with one of your undergraduates within the last 6 months, you can give us a short description or a short abstract, if you will, on that publication with your students. And again, you can check that out at our website if you'd like to submit undergraduate research highlights, just another way to kind of highlight your students and the good work that you're doing with them. So I kind of, hinted at this in my little presentation, but fundamentally, what are we looking for? So on the next slide, if you're thinking about, well, I'm interested in submitting to this journal, but, what are the kind of general articles you're looking for? Well, my friends, we would begin with innovative models and practices in undergraduate research, which are transferable to other institutions. So if there's something very unique, very innovative that you've done that could very much benefit other liberal arts colleges or comprehensive regional universities or universities of all shapes and sizes, we'd love to see a submission. Articles that deal with assessment, especially related to RPG. I don't mean a rocket-propelled grenade, although I know it can feel like that sometimes. So my goodness, anything dealing with retention, progression, and graduation rates, how undergraduate research promotes any one of those three or all of those three, we are always looking for those articles. Undergraduate research in connection to key economic, environment, political, and social challenges. Again, we hope we're really tapping into this with the upcoming issue on climate change. And then as we note on our next slide, creative ways to fund undergraduate research. Whoa, we're always looking for articles on that front. And again, when we look at what's going on right now in terms of the pandemic and state budgets, right, to be honest, we're going to have to get even more creative with how we fund undergraduate research endeavors. I've mentioned a couple of times cures. So course-based undergraduate research experiences, we've been publishing a lot on that the last few years. Kerr itself has been highlighting this, so we'd love to see what you're doing there. And then also models of mentoring undergraduate research. There's a voluminous literature, but we're always happy to see more. Oh, and then international perspectives. If you're at an institution in Canada or Central America or Europe or Asia, we'll put you in touch with our international perspectives editor. So my friends, these are just some examples. It's not meant to be exhaustive, but I hope that kind of helps in terms of the types of articles that we're looking for. And then the final slide for my segment before I hand it over to Dr. Gates is basically author guidelines. As I mentioned, you can see the submission guidelines. Those are nicely put on our website. But, talk with a SPUR editor. So if you're in chemistry, you can talk to our chemistry division editor. You can always reach out to me. We're happy to give you feedback before you submit. And we also, even if you're not looking to submit something right now, we would love to have you as a reviewer. So if you're an undergraduate research program coordinator or a faculty member who's very involved in undergraduate research in your discipline or department, we would love to have you sign up as a reviewer for manuscripts that come into our journal, and you can just send an email to spur@kerr.org, and we will get you in our database, and would love to have your professional service in that area. So that's kind of a quick overview from where I sit as editor-in-chief. And so let me turn it over to my partner in crime, Dr. Lisa Gates, who serves as one of our issue editors.
Thank you, James. I am coming to you from the comfort of my living room, and so hopefully the internet access remains robust. My name is Lisa Gates, and I'm Associate Dean for Fellowships and Research at Middlebury College in Middlebury, Vermont. I've been involved with Kerr since 2015, first with the at-large division, and now with the URPD position, which is part of my role at the college. I became involved with SPUR very early on at the time of transition from the Kerr Quarterly to SPUR's current shape and format, which was a very exciting process. And I just want to, before I launch into some discussion of the issues that I've been working on, I just want to reiterate James's encouragement for folks to sign up to be reviewers. We're always looking for reviewers who have particular areas of expertise that match up to the articles that we're receiving. We welcome people from all kinds of institutions. I know the liberal arts college scene very well, but I don't know the comprehensive regional university scene terribly well. So really, everyone from faculty and staff and different roles in different institutions, your expertise is very welcome. And I encourage you, if you have particular areas of focus, to note that when you sign up to be a reviewer. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Thank you. So what makes a good article for SPUR? I think I'm going to echo a lot of the things that James mentioned in his overview of some of the general categories that our readers are really interested in. So I've, through the articles that I've read, I've seen a lot of really interesting approaches and engagement with undergraduate research. I think we're really interested in innovative, strategic, impactful ways of engaging undergraduate research in higher education and at your institution. And so this looks very different on our different campuses, but there's a tremendous amount we can learn from one another. It's not so much a space to publish the result of undergraduate research work, but rather to focus on the theoretical, the pedagogical, the practical dimensions of working with undergraduate research in a variety of contexts. We are interested in attention to evidence, data as available in order to understand the impact of the work that you're doing on your campus. If you do have case studies, which James alluded to, programs that you're doing on your campus that you see as really impactful, interesting, innovative. We're very much interested in that, but also encourage you to pay attention to thinking about advice for other institutions. So how might this thing that you're doing be applied on other types of campuses? So thinking about lessons learned, tips for getting started, challenges, all of those kinds of pointers are really helpful. Next slide, please. So again, as I said, we're interested in experiences from all disciplines and from a diversity of institutions. We engage in undergraduate research in so many different ways. And I think there are some areas where we'd love to see more. For example, I'm very excited about the themed issue focusing on humanities and arts. And I also love to see engagement and profiles of undergraduate research from two-year colleges, from opportunity granting institutions. There are so many really interesting and innovative things happening across disciplines and institutions, and we welcome you to share that with us. Potential areas, again, pedagogy, ways in which we weave undergraduate research across the curriculum through cures and other kinds of research infused courses, institutional alignment, thinking about how we strengthen support for this by bringing together academic programs and departments as well as administrative structures, community partnerships through your campus that help amplify the student engagement and the impact, as well as extracurricular engagement with undergraduate research.
What's the average processing time for an article from submission to decision, and how that review process works, and then how long until publication?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think we've all probably been in a situation where we submit something to a journal and then, oh my Lord, do not hear things for a long months and months and months. Or if we do get accepted, it can be, I don't know, 2 years or sometimes even longer to publication. So we endeavor, at least my focus is to get feedback to you within 3 to 4 months. I was just in touch with some authors who submitted actually in January. So I was very pleased. We were in touch in March on a revise and resubmit. Now, to be honest with you, there are cases where sometimes we have to go through 6 or 7 reviewers until we get 2 to 3 who have accepted. That's why, if you're interested in reviewing, to echo Lisa's point, we'd love to have you sign up as a reviewer. So there are some cases where it may be from submission to my getting the word to you, rejected, accepted with minor revisions, or accepted, or a major revise and resubmit. That might sometimes stretch out to 6 months. But I want you to know you can always email me at any time. It never annoys me. I will always update you. I have 1 reviewer in. I have 2 reviewers in. I'm waiting. I just need to hear from the division editor. I'll get in touch with the division editor. So yeah, ideally 3 to 4. Sometimes it might be 6 months or a bit longer. I am pleased that when we generally, so if it's a themed issue, you can see with our timeline on themed issues, we pretty much have you submit a prospectus. We make a decision. So Lisa and I will later this month look at all the ones for climate change. We'll do invitations. So, I mean, that's pretty much a year timeline from when you submit that manuscript to when it comes out in print. We're pretty much publishing it within a year. And non-themed manuscripts, right? Ones that you just submit any day of the year, it is our goal to have those published. So from the time you submit to the decision I send you, to a revise and resubmit, to moving it through production, we want to see that out within a year. There's some cases where it stretches a little longer, but I feel pretty good that we're pretty much publishing within a year of when you initially submit to us. And like I said, try to have feedback to you on the initial round of reviews in 3 months, 4 months. Some occasions it stretches to 6, but those are some of our most important questions when we submit to a journal. So I I appreciate those questions.
Thank you. So another question that we have here is, in light of the timing and changes that have gone over the last few weeks, and it may be too early to think of this, but do you think it would be possible to do a special issue on undergraduate research as remote learning and how that works for online students?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll also ask my colleague Lisa to chime in on this. So we will, if we do a themed issue for fall of next year, I know that's a ways off, but we would actually get that call out later this summer. And gosh, it's a good question. This might be the ideal time to start looking at undergraduate research in the various modalities. We have an article that was just accepted that has some kind of cool assessment data on students in fully online programs versus those that are in traditional face-to-face. And when accepting that article, I thought, gosh, we don't have a lot of scholarship on this. There's some out there. So, what are we doing in terms of assessment of online education and undergraduate research? What are we doing in terms of different modalities, in terms of our practices? And given the fact that, right, all of our universities are online now with our studios, our labs, our lectures, I like the question. That could be, I mean, I'll take that to the editorial board, and maybe that's our call for proposals this fall or later this summer for what would be the fall of next year issue. But Lisa, I welcome your thoughts too on that.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with your assessment, James. I think it's an excellent idea. I'm just speaking for myself, of course, and these things are determined with the editorial board. But I think it's a really important question, and it's one that is not well studied. I don't recall seeing very many manuscripts that touch upon online learning and research. There have been a few campuses that have hybrid modalities. But for all of us right now, I think this question is at front and center. And if you're looking at Inside Higher Ed and the Chronicle, there's a huge question about what this means right now to kind of mothball our research activities during the summer and what sort of impacts that has. And I've increasingly been thinking on our campus about how do we sort of break out of some of those traditional modes of engagement and think about what can we accomplish through remote research activities and how might we do that? And I'm certainly not alone in those thoughts. And I think that would be a really fascinating issue because I think we all have to recognize this may not be an entirely singular moment where we have to turn to online technologies. And it's also a very desirable modality for learning for a lot of our, certainly for our non-traditional students.
This is Beth Foxwell. I wanted to add that a few of our articles from our big data and undergraduate research issue from summer of 2019 may be helpful in this regard, because there are a few articles that deal with online databases and collections that can be helpful in this COVID-19 environment.
For the vignettes, are those shorter, paragraph or two, are they summaries of other articles that have been published elsewhere, or are those also initial publications?
Oh yeah. Thank you, Robin. So yeah, my apologies if I blew through that too quickly. So yeah, vignettes are these are initial original publications. I mean, these are descriptions of what you're doing, or they may even be a description of some of what you've done in terms of assessment. So yeah, they're not summaries of previous articles. They're not summaries of previous work. They would be, kind of the best way I can describe a vignette is if you submit for the upcoming theme on undergraduate research and climate change. I mean, there will be some prospecti that Lisa and I receive where, within one or two paragraphs, you have just beautifully summarized what you're doing. You've kind of encapsulated it perfectly. Or it's a multi-institutional collaboration and you describe it, you include a web link. So again, this is something where in a relatively short format, it's of great benefit to our readers. And those are desk reviewed, you know, we don't send them out to multiple peer reviewers, but they are editorially reviewed between Lisa and I. And then, you know, we may ask for revisions. We may ask for some changes or clarifications. And when you submit, right, you can tell us, okay, I'm submitting a vignette. You know, this is a vignette I would like to have considered for publication, or this is a full-length manuscript I would like to have submitted for publication, and not to muddy the waters too much, but, you know, there might be some cases where you know, you wanted to submit a manuscript, you know, we had 5 or 6 others that for whatever reason are kind of higher on our priority list, but we might come back to you and say, well, we can't necessarily, or we don't really have room to ask you to submit a full-length manuscript, but how about a vignette? We would like our readers to know about the really cool work you're doing, and so that original publication could still happen as a vignette. And like I said, that pretty much comes up with our themed issues. So.
Great. So another question that's come through is, what if we've only done a pilot study and so we have limited assessment data? How would you handle that?
Yeah, so again, I appreciate that question, because we see this periodically where, you know, maybe you've only run something for 2 semesters, or maybe it's in its first year. And I would not want to discourage you from submitting to us. I mean, I think you want to be upfront and say, right, this is a pilot project and we ran it, you know, spring of last year and fall of last year, and here's some of our preliminary data. And I go back to our table of contents, right? There's practice, but then there's also assessment. And, we would love you to have robust assessment data, but if you're just getting started and it's a really cool idea, I don't know that we want to wait 3 years until you have a whole bunch of assessment data to have it considered for publication. I mean, we might want to publish that under our practice heading, under the table of contents in practice. And so, yeah, I think if you just kind of say, hey, it's a pilot project, we're just getting started, but my goodness, here's what we learned from just the first iteration to the second iteration, and here's some preliminary data we have. And I say data, I mean, it might be qualitative, right? You might have focus groups, or you might have comments from SOIs. Right, it doesn't always have to be pre-test, post-test. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying you can certainly submit pilot studies to us. Just be very upfront about what this is and what we've learned from it and how other institutions could emulate transferability, if you will. Even if you are just starting the project or initiative or whatever good work you might be doing on your campus.
Great. And where can we find SPUR? In what databases or indexes is it available?
Oh yeah, and I'll have Beth help remind me in case I leave anything out. So SPUR, like I said, it's a rigorous peer review that we're proud of. We're at about a 45% acceptance rate right now. It's indexed in EBSCOhost as well as ERIC. Once we have 3 volumes, which we're almost there, once we have 3 full volumes of SPUR, there's a variety of databases that we can take our journal to and say, here's 3 years of peer-reviewed scholarship to have that considered. So, I mean, I hope we're dramatically expanding the databases and indices that we're in, very quickly within the next year. But Beth, there might be others that I failed to mention.
Yes, James. SPUR is also in ProQuest Education, and those ProQuest citations are showing up in Google Scholar. So if you do search in Google Scholar, our ProQuest citations will show up in there.
Great, great.